If you'd like to check your bag onto your final destination, we can do so complimentary here at the podium of gate 23B.
Back in San Antonio, got in at 3 a.m. I think it was 3:45 a.m. when I got back in the van with my cases. Got 2 hours of sleep last night. I got an 8 a.m. call time, and there was no gas in the truck, so fueling up right now, which may make me 3 minutes late. We'll see. Okay, so I was one of 3 crews on this shoot. We're all connected over Zoom or Teams, I forget which one. And then the producer coordinated all of this remotely. Basically 3 docs, each in their private practices. My doc was the moderator, and then the other 2 docs I think were like subject matter experts. And this is like I think a clinical trial for a new medication. So originally the notes were production sent out these laptops to each of the locations that were preloaded with the conferencing app, and then they had a HDMI to webcam converter. So the instructions were just have a camera that can send an HDMI feed into the call, and then we shot and placed the footage on the laptop. And then there was a Pelican case with a FedEx overnight return label. Thought that was all pretty smart. Just drop your footage onto the Windows machine, put it in a Pelican, and send it off. And then you can see here I have a monitor under the lens. The instructions were to have a return monitor. And initially I thought this was so that all of the doctors could see each other as reference during the meeting while they're having a discussion. But it turned out it was actually for slides that were controlled by the producer remotely. And then I thought, okay, they're bullet points, so they stay on topic or questions to reference. Well, because this was a medication or pharma related thing, and I've done these in the past, it ended up being a verbatim script that the doctors were required to read. So I suggested, I learned all of this prior to the shoot, and I said, you know what, I've got a teleprompter, really we should do a prompter. Just send the Zoom feed, the graphic content, through the lens to the prompter, and got a little pushback. They're like, no, we don't want to confuse the doctors, which confused me. I'm like, so they're still looking at a monitor. I don't understand why that's more confusing. Well, at any rate, maybe I just did a poor job of trying to explain the solution. I should have sent them reference photos, which I will do in the future, so learn from my mistakes. So anyway, we shot this thing. We ended up doing it 3 times, and I think it was like a 90-minute presentation times 3. And that was because of the struggling eye line thing. Like all 3 docs are like looking down below the lens. And yeah, prompter would have solved that. So anyway, and then you can see here on the table lavalier mic and an IFB return coming off the Zoom feed. They didn't want a speaker in the room sending the mix minus. I think that's so in the edit they basically don't have to mix the audio relative to who's speaking. They can just leave all 3 tracks up and do a quick line cut. So this is my first time using, well, I shouldn't say that. I just bought 4 lav mics, sadly from a buddy who passed away. So I've got 2 trams and then 2 of the Oscar Tech. I think it's TL40, the Oscar Tech tram equivalent. So I ran a tram mic here, and I've been using the Cause 11s, Sankins, and then my go-to is always a cardioid or hypercardioid on a boom pole. Well, at any rate, just following instructions on this one, went with the lav, and that tram picks up every little tick, bump, and noise in the room. Like, I closed the audio door on the camera, and it was quiet, but that clicking sound came through loud and clear on the lav mic, and just me shifting in my chair, not squeaking, just like the noise of the quiet chair moving. All of that was audible on mic, and I don't hear any of that when I'm running a cardioid in close proximity to the presenter. So anyway, I always prefer the boom, and this just reinforced it for me. Running on 2 hours of sleep, this was probably the worst case scenario of a shoot day. I would have preferred to be doing manual labor out in the sun as opposed to spending 5 hours in a chair behind a camera, a locked off camera. Kickoff to the week started at 4 a.m., 6 a.m. departure, and I'm in Boise, Idaho. I got here about 6 hours ahead of the rest of the crew. I chose not to get a rental car. I Ubered over here. So I'm gonna go walk to lunch. I've got 4 options to choose from. Hotel checked me in early. That was super nice of them. The trade-off was 2 queens versus a single king. Hey, can't complain with that. It's not the back of a van without air conditioning. If you haven't already heard it, Boise has the most expensive housing in the United States relative to local wages. This started before the pandemic, and it's just the result of all of the remote workers and retirees from the West Coast, mostly California, but you also have Oregon and Washington State.
Are designed where every house is on a lake, so you can't go in the water, but you can at least, like, people have like that
Little
where you
chairs
have
set
little
up, yeah.
chairs, or you can go. Like, we just love this kind of style.
Oh yeah, like that. Single story is the way to go.
Yeah. Just that kind of modern farmhouse kind of. Is that, you like that stone?
Yeah, I do.
We're gonna kind of frame it that way.
Yeah, I think like going this way.
So I'll be looking this kind of this way.
Let me see this. Yeah, okay, how about this way? Yeah, you're right, this way's better. Fills out the background more. This is one of my preferred Amira airline builds. If I'm not doing handheld, I'm just working off a tripod or other devices other than my shoulder. It's a flat base made by Vocus, so the shoulder pad can come off the camera. And then I'm running the RE EF mount with my EF primes. That's a 35L at a 2.0. And then I've got my little travel boom pole on a kit stand. And the overhead 5-in-1 reflector is to cut the overhead lighting. It's particularly effective in offices that have can lights. You know, I don't want they make such hard shadows on people's faces. And then if I get someone that's bald, I like to either go white or black, just case by case up there. Passive, I generally don't put any light into it, but that's much preferred over reflections and specular highlights on people's heads or foreheads or receding hairlines. I like to just always start with an overhead to control the room. Here are my 3 airline cases plus the battery carry-on for this show. In total, we traveled to 6 cities. Jumping in real time, we've shot out 5 of 6. I got 1 to go. I don't even know where we're going. They're still working to lock in the details on the subject and location. But basically, we shoot an interview, and then we jump over to the gimbal and shoot B-roll and high speed, 48 FPS. Basically gives them the option to use it slow mode, or they can 2x it for real time. Basically, they only go real time if it's a shot of someone having a conversation with someone else, because it just looks weird seeing people chat in slow-mo. But 1 Pelican is the light kit, 1 is the 2 cameras and audio, and then the 3rd one is tripod, battery chargers, and my personal clothing. Picked up a new dual travel charger. Takes about 3 hours, 45 minutes to charge one 90 watt hour brick. I was traveling with a quad high speed charger, which charged in about half the time, maybe 2 hours for a dead battery versus 3 hours and 45 minutes. So this one, I gotta be careful. Fortunately, we haven't had a battery deficit. I travel with 6 batteries, but during an interview, I'm running up to 4 batteries between lights, camera, and a reference monitor. So the bummer with this is at the 4-hour mark in the hotel rooms, I got to get up in the middle of the night and cycle batteries, but it does save me 5 pounds on my luggage. This is my old high-nit backup Steadicam monitor. I think it's probably 10 years old, and now it's just my beater travel monitor. It's not the best picture, but it's bright enough that you can see it outdoors, and I can snap a gold mount battery on the back. And then I'm running the Hollyland transmitter receiver, and I can cycle the transmitter between the gimbal setup and the interview camera. When it's on the Amira, run SDI, and when it's on the gimbal, run a hyper-thin HDMI. Moving on to the Boise State campus, got to run around on a golf cart and do a tech scout. We shot a few exteriors here along the creek. And then we went over by the football stadium and the administrative building. All right, I think we just hit the 13-hour mark in our day. Look at this weather. Woo. Our plane came in right ahead of this thunder cell. Welcome to Denver. We're set up in another vacant office in Denver, Colorado. This place is new for this company. It opened up in, I think, mid-2020, and essentially no one has worked here since it opened up. I mean, there's one person in a desk on the other side. It's the entire floor of a building. And this is not at all unusual. This is every single office I have worked in since mid-2020. Empty corporate offices. The only exceptions are manufacturing facilities. Plants where they make stuff, there's actually people present. But it is nice from a shoot perspective. We set up in like 1/3 the time because rarely, I'm gonna fall over here, rarely is there security. Don't really have to get escorts anymore. You know, you always, when you come in for an interview, they've reserved a nice little conference room interrogation box, which no one wants to shoot in. So we're always trying to diplomatically get the okay to shoot out in open space like this. We're shooting across the break area. And I'm gonna have the windows in the background, the building L's out, and it's shaded right there. So that's why we chose this spot. I have windows that are backlit but not blown out. And same over there. That's still holding some trees back there in the distance. I guess that little white strip at the top is gonna be a little hot. But 35mm lens, close focus. My focus is about 6 feet. This is sort of my preferred corporate interview setup, which is somewhat unconventional. I like to shoot a wider lens, closer focus, because I want to showcase the space and the environment the person's in, at the expense of it maybe being a slightly less flattering focal length on facial features. You know, kind of can elongate noses and cheekbones and chins. 35 versus, you know, an 85 I think is like the go-to in Super 35 for your typical talking head. But I prefer wider. I like seeing the space the person works in. Waiting for picture. There it is. Okay.